All right, colleagues, we're going to get things started. We're of course meeting here in Council Chambers on Tuesday, September 6th, 2022. We have just recently come out of a closed session, and during that time, the Council agenda was adopted unanimously by colleagues. So I'm pleased to call the meeting to order, the open session of the meeting to order. I want to acknowledge it's a big day for many families in the community who've sent their kids back to school after what I hope was a fun-filled summer. It is also, as Councillor O'Sullivan reminded me, just 2 weeks before the commencement of the International Ploughing Match. Hundreds of volunteers are working away alongside the board of the Ontario Ploughmen's Association, which has been preparing for this event for almost 2 years. Councillor Sullivan, anything you want to add on International Ploughing Match? Are we good for volunteers? Anything the community needs to know?
We are good for volunteers, thank you. We have over 900 registered volunteers, and orientation day is Sunday, September 11th, and we hope as many volunteers as possible will be there, and certainly encourage everyone to come to the match. There'll be something for everyone, and it's all coming together.
And I believe there's a little bit of space at the RV park left, if I'm not mistaken.
There is still RV park spaces available, so.
And this would be the last day that one can buy advance tickets online and save $5 at the door?
I think, was that
September
today?
6th?
That's today? Okay.
Okay, so just a reminder, if you want to save $5 at the gate for those adult tickets, tonight is your night. And of course, my understanding is kids under 5 are free, and kids six years of age up to 15 are just $5.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, we look forward to what the next couple of weeks holds as everyone gets ready for what is North Grenville's largest event in its history, and part of the event is, of course, being held on Kemptville campus lands, and part of it is being held on some private farmlands as well. So with that, I'll just go to disclosures of interest. Colleagues, this is your opportunity to declare any perceived or real financial benefit or loss arising from the meeting this evening. Any disclosures? Scanning the room, seeing none. Great. Then we'll move on to our presentations and delegations. And Mr. Steve Patterson is here this evening to talk about the Kemptville Terry Fox Run. And I was just saying to Mr. Patterson, and as we walked in from dropping our kids off to hockey, Mr. Patterson, we have done a council promo video, and it'll be out in the next 24 hours just to encourage folks to register in the community. Welcome. And just turn on that mic so that you're audible, especially for the live stream. And make sure to speak directly into the mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Peckford and members of council, thank you for allowing me the time to speak to you this evening. My name is Steve Patterson, and I'm representing the Kemptville Terry Fox Committee this year. As you may know, September 1st marked 42 years since Terry Fox ran his last mile, the Marathon of Hope. Although cancer forced him to stop his marathon, he never gave up the hope. Terry promised to return to the road if his health would allow it. He may not have been able to run again, but for 42 years, Canadians and other countries around the world have continued on in his name with hopes to someday find a cure for cancer. Terry persevered, and likewise on a smaller scale, so has the community of North Grenville. The Terry Fox Run has been a staple in the North Grenville community for over 35 years. Despite not being able to have an in-person event for the past 2 years, in which we have raised over $30,000, bringing our cumulative total to well over $300,000. We are excited this year to once again finally host an in-person event and to help celebrate both Terry and our community's passion for finding cancer's cure. The event is taking place at the Ferguson Forestry Center on Sunday, September 18th. The run will begin at 10 a.m. Participants can choose to walk, run, or bike a 2-kilometer, 5-kilometer, or 10-kilometer route. Those looking to sign up for the run can do so by visiting terryfox.org and registering under the site of Kemptville. And/or anyone looking to make a donation can do so online. T-shirts and other merchandise are available at shop.terryfox.org. T-shirts will also be available at the registration table at 9 a.m. on the day of the event. We, the Kemptville Terry Fox Committee, ask the council to declare Sunday, September 18th, 2022, Terry Fox Day in North Grenville, and raise the Terry Fox flag on the week leading up to the event to show that the spirit of this event and his name are still alive in North Grenville. We kindly ask you, as members of council, to consider promoting this event through your individual social media platforms, as well as we hope to see you at the event running, walking, biking, or cheering on this incredible community. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Any questions or comments? I was very impressed to learn that it was over $30,000 for those 2 virtual runs.
Yeah, just over 15,000 for each year.
That's remarkable.
So it was really, really good to see. It was kind of nervous times for us. I'm not sure what the totals would look like, but like I said, North Grenville definitely shone through and showed their commitment to the run and to finding a cure.
And do you have a goal in terms of in-person participation this year?
Our biggest participation total just the year before we had to go virtual was 200, so we're hoping to hit that again. If we can surpass it, great, but we're hoping to kind of pick back up where we left off.
And last-minute registration's no problem? Show up on
Not a
this?
problem at all. No, just register online. With the way the world kind of turned with COVID, we are trying to go moneyless at the registration table, but we'll take whatever funds come our way. Yeah, so.
And do you know how long Kemptville or North Grenville has been doing the run? Has it been for all 42 years?
The first run, if my records are right, was in 1985, so just a few years shy, but it's run every year since, minus 1 or 2 where just it didn't pan out, I guess, but since 85 for sure.
And where is the starting point in Ferguson? Where do people congregate?
So it'll start on the St. Michael's track, just behind the school. So participants can park at St. Mike's or in the north parking lot here, and then just walk to the track, and we'll start from there and finish there as well.
And do people bring pets? Like, can they bring their dog to walk, or a skateboard if somebody wants to go that way?
Yeah, dogs, pets are definitely welcome, just as long as they're on a leash. There's rest stations along the way with refillable refillable stations for water bottles, and there'll be bowls on the ground for the dogs to replenish as well. Treats. Someone can rollerblade. It might be a little bumpy on the gravel, but they're welcome to try it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else, council colleagues? We certainly appreciate your effort and continued leadership keeping the run going. I know it's a very meaningful event. It's fantastic that you can do it in Ferguson Forest, which is such a wonderful location. So we wish you the best of luck, and thank you again. I think I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the following: that council receive the presentation and proclaim, of course, on September 18th, or proclaim September 18th, rather, as Terry Fox Run Day, and direct the flag to be raised September 13th to 19th, 2020. I see Councillor Wilson and Councillor Sullivan moving and seconding. Of course, I think everyone wanted to move that one, but we've got a motion on the table. I'll call the question. All in favor, please. Thank you. Mr. Patterson, finally, I know some of the schools do their own runs.
Yeah.
Oxford and Rideau being one of them.
Definitely, yep. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll be out running the community of Oxford Mills on the 24th, I believe the school day is.
And if a school hasn't done it before but would like to this year, or a gym class or an art class, what's the process? Should they get in touch with you?
They would, it's a different, they could get in touch through terryfox.org, just
Okay.
do the contact, and there's a school representative that could give them the resources that they need.
So they register as a separate event and they can do it anytime in September? Is that the idea?
Yeah, there's an official day, like an official school day, the 24th, I believe.
Okay.
But any day works. And speaking of any day works, last year and the year before where we did go virtual, I know that kind of helped people out, because I know I've talked to people in the past, and they want to participate, they want to be a part of it, but that day the day of the event doesn't work for them. Hockey's coming up, other clubs are coming up, and people are busy, so there is still that virtual option. If the 18th is not a date that works, you can still do it on their own time. And one of my favorite Terry stories is he used to leave the bag of rocks where he'd stop, and then that's where he picked up the next day. And the one day it blew away, and he went back to the last spot he remembered for sure, just to make sure he didn't miss a step. So he was true to his word, and he ran every step. And someone who needs to do it virtual, we trust that they'll do it as well, and they can do that on a time and a location that works for them.
People can run their way through the international plowing match, perhaps.
That's right, they definitely can.
Run the periphery of the tented city, and they'll get a 5K in, or maybe a little bit less.
That's
more.
right.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Thank you. It's great that you could be here again. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much for giving me the time.
For sure. Okay. So I was so eager to hear about Terry Fox and the run that I neglected to invite one of my council colleagues to do the land acknowledgement. So any volunteers this evening for the land acknowledgement? Councillor Sullivan?
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe. We honor the historic relationship of the Haudenosaunee and Huron-Wendat peoples to this land. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship with all Indigenous peoples, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and fostering the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan, very much. There are no minutes to review this session in open. We'll move to reports. And I believe, Mr. Dyke, you have two items under Office of the CEO. Am I mistaken? Wait, these are under the consent agenda. I apologize. So we'll go back up to the consent agenda. So, colleagues, there are a number of items under the consent agenda. One for an application for a special occasion permit submitted by the Kemptville 73s Junior Hockey Club, as well as Public Works, our 2022 Water and Wastewater Biennial Report, minutes from the North Grenville Public Library, 3 sets, as well as Old Town Kemptville BIA minutes for June. Is there any member that wishes to pull an item from the consent agenda? Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to pull out number 1, the application for the special permit for information purposes only.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I would like to pull Public Works 2022 Water and Wastewater Biennial Report. So with that, colleagues, we're left with the North Grenville Public Library minutes and Old Town Kemptville BIA. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda as amended. Just one sec before I do that. Mr. Patterson. Absolutely. That's our flag, is that right? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So looking for a mover and a seconder for the amended consent agenda, please. Councillor Sullivan, are you moving? Okay, and I need a seconder. Councillor Starkian, thank you. And I'll call the question. This is a non-debatable motion. Okay, all in favor? Good, thank you. So with that, if I'm not mistaken, we're going back to Mr. Dyke? Okay, Ms. Workman, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The municipality received a request from the Kemptville 73s Junior Hockey Club requesting that council deem the 2022-2023 hockey season as a municipally significant event for the purpose of obtaining a special occasion permit from the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario. This permit will allow the Kemptville 73s to obtain a liquor license. The club is looking to provide attendees with an authentic experience by partnering with a local microbrewery to offer alcohol sales. The Kemptville 73s Junior Hockey Club is a local organization that has been part of the community for over 50 years, bringing the community together through the passion of hockey. The Kempville 73s also give back to the local community on and off season through providing camps to aspiring hockey players to volunteering in local classrooms. Should council approve the request, the Kempville 73s Junior Hockey Club shall adhere to all rules and regulations under the Alcohol and Gaming Commission and Bylaw 8-13, the municipal alcohol policy in accordance with the rental of municipal facilities. The club shall also coordinate all requirements through the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture or his designate to ensure compliance. It is staff's recommendation that the Kempville 73s Junior Hockey Club home games meet the criteria of a municipally significant event.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Workman? Councillor Sullivan?
No questions, Madam Mayor. It's just a comment that this came under discussions with Parks, Recreation and Culture prior to the pandemic and the closure of all the home games or all hockey games in the arena. And it was probably going to come forward at that time, but got put on hold for a couple of years. So I think it's something that goes on in other similar level of hockey in other areas, other arenas and municipalities. So I think it's something that I will support, and I would move that motion if you like.
Indeed, so I'll look for a seconder because the motion is on the table. Seconder, please, Councillor Wilson, and I'll recognize Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Perhaps the question is to Director Guy. With respect to this request, is there a financial benefit for the Kempville 73s, or is there other motivation behind offering this beyond it's a sporting event and we should allow alcohol sales?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Strachan. I would believe that there's it's a way for them to generate some extra revenue for the hockey team by doing this.
Yes, and maybe I can't speak to that, but certainly my understanding in receiving the initial request is, as Councillor Sullivan said, some of the other communities are going down this path. Kempville 73s is under new ownership, and I think there's a real want to work in partnership with the municipality on some improvements in the arena now that we're at pandemic times, and also to generate a lot of excitement in the community in regards to those home games. So I think that's part of the rationale. So motion is on the table. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Good. That passes. Okay, so now I think we're over to you, Mr. Dyke, on the matter of the appointment of the clerk.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just quickly, with the return of Ms. Corney to York Region a number of months ago, we were very fortunate to have Ms. Workman with us as the Royal Deputy Clerk. And as Council will have noticed, and based on my review of her work as Deputy Clerk, I think it was simply a benefit to the municipality to promote Jessica into the role of Clerk, subject to Council's approval tonight. Okay.
Thank you. Council colleagues, any comments or questions in regards? Okay. As some may know, Ms. Babcock-Cormier, our clerk for, I think, almost 2 years, left to resume some more legal activities, which was her sort of trade in the municipal world. She was a Solicitor General. Is that aptly stated? She was our municipal solicitor, thank you, and has transitioned back to a region in southwestern Ontario to do many of those activities. I know, Ms. Workman, you worked very closely with the former clerk, and I think got lots of exposure to the realities of this position, so I think we'd be very pleased to make that decision and name you as clerk. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder to that end. Councillor Barkley and Councillor Strachan. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Good. Congratulations, Ms. Workman. You've got your work cut out for you, but I think you're up for it. Okay, thank you. So nothing under planning and development this evening, colleagues. We do have under Public Works the 2022 Wastewater Biennial Report as a first item. And colleagues, my rationale for pulling this out of the consent agenda is often we get questions from the community in terms of growth and what are the pressures on our systems, whether they're wastewater or water. And I understand from the report that all is well, no pun intended, in speaking of our many wells. But maybe Ms. Dunlop, don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you know this area well. Perhaps you could just summarize very quickly the findings of the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to fulfill the requirements under the Drinking Water Quality Management System, or DWQMS, and to provide Council with information regarding the water and wastewater system operations for the first half of 2022, and for Council to receive these reports. Element 12 of the DWQMS, communication, includes a requirement for staff to communicate to Council and provide informational updates. This requirement is satisfied by reporting to Council and, in addition, includes information about the wastewater system as it operates on a similar compliance network. Information of equipment operations, calibrations, maintenance, adverse testings or incidents, and project updates are included in these reports. Some highlights are: one adverse water quality incident was reported due to elevated levels of sodium, which is a historical, naturally occurring level. There were 7 water breaks in the first half of 2022, and there was 1 tertiary bypass due to heavy rainfall at the wastewater treatment facility. There were no treatment parameter exceedances during this period of reporting. That completes the report.
Any questions, colleagues? I do have one. There's a reference to the newest well that's that's under construction right now. I know some in the community have asked questions about the impact of the Northwest Quadrant well on other wells, whether they're municipal or private in the community, and I wonder, Director Dunlop, if you could speak to that.
Certainly, the Northwest Quadrant well is to be an addition to the municipal system itself. The municipal system, typically, all the wells are interconnected. So currently we have, this will be our 5th well. The municipal wells and private wells, which we have many within the municipality of North Green, operate on different aquifers. So there should be no direct connection between private wells and the lower aquifer that the municipality draws from. Although the raw characteristics are quite similar, we all have hard water here. There's high iron and elevated sodium in pockets. So there should be no direct impact to any private wells, and it will balance out, from a quantity and quality perspective, the municipal system to accommodate growth and fire protection and domestic flow.
And the Ministry of Environment approved that well, and everything is in order in terms of all the rules and regulations.
That is correct. We have put an application in. The Ministry of the Environment have approved it, and we are moving forward with the construction by a development component, as well as commissioning, hopefully within the next 12 months.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Barclay?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Dunlop. I just want to clarify, the municipal wells are in the deepest aquifer. Is that the Oxford or the Nepean?
That one always throws me.
Okay.
But yes, we are in the deepest.
The deepest one.
Which is
The Nepean?
The Nepean is the
Okay.
deeper of the two, and it is typically in excess of 200 feet deep and can go to greater grades.
And all the private wells then are in the higher one,
They're in the Oxford or
The
above.
Oxford.
They can be in shallower aquifers, which are unnamed, but yes.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you. And they're all good quantity and good quality.
The municipal wells are good quality and quantity, yes.
Okay, and can accommodate growth. Perfect.
Yes, and that's the intent as identified in the master plans, infrastructure master plans that we bring back to council roughly every 5 years. We make sure that we have adequate resources for domestic and fire flow requirements.
Great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Barclay?
Since we're here for information purposes, maybe you could share with us, when you report a tertiary bypass, can you just elaborate on bypass? I mean, it sounds like nothing gets handled, but that's not the case. And I have another question after you tackle that one.
The wastewater treatment plant has many steps in treatment. There's the primary, there's the aeration, there's the secondary, there's the tertiary, and there's UV. In a high flow event, the only ability that the wastewater treatment plant currently has is to bypass the tertiary. Well, basically, it's a Brita filter. It's a large carbon activated filter process. So that is the only possibility for high flow events that can be bypassed. The 4 other treatment trains remain active and provide a level of treatment.
Great. So it's treated to a certain extent, just the tertiary process isn't accommodated. Today at our liaison meeting, you shared some information about septage receiving. I think the public should be interested in knowing what design modifications have resulted in terms of savings. Could you share that with us?
As part of the detailed design, as we go through the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, septage receiving is one of the components. The original estimate for septage receiving was almost a standalone style system, large concrete tank with meters, etc., and was estimated to be $4 to $5 million. Currently, the design is incorporated into the design or the flow of the treatment facility and is estimated to be about 1/10 of that. So we, as incorporating it as part of the flow, yes, we still have a concrete tank, yes, we do have metering, but it will flow into the equalization facility, which is part of the greater treatment train of the plant.
So detailed design of that septage receiving resulted in, a reduction in estimated cost from $5 million to $500,000, 500,000. Yeah, great. Thank you. 500,000 instead of $5 million.
And Ms. Dunlop, to be clear, all upgrades to the water treatment facility are financed how?
The upgrades, which are currently estimated at a little over $39 million, will be funded by development charges, as well as a portion by the Solicitor General as we move through the design phase of the correctional facility, through development charges collected, as well as funding opportunities. And of course, we are always looking for grants, which Christine has helped us out as we go through this process.
And no burden to the general taxpayer, correct?
That is correct.
Right. So those who aren't serviced by municipal water and sewer do not pay into the system at all to ensure or facilitate those upgrades.
That is correct. They do not pay for the operation, nor do the capital expansion for development, which are covered by development charges.
Okay. And then finally, I noticed reference to 7 water breaks in the first quarter of 2022. I know a couple of those were on concession, where some work is currently underway to potentially redesign the underground system there. Do you want to just speak to where the hotspots are?
Just pulling up that list, we had 7 water breaks in over a 3-month period, actually, when they were concentrated. And if I can find that list, which I just flew past, we had 2 on Blossom, 1 on Thomas, 1 on Mary, 1 on Reuben, 1 on Rideau, and 1 on Hilltop. Last year, we had about 4 on concession, and we were successful in regards to getting a water main replacement grant for the concession road water main. You will see that there's been some boreholes, soil sampling, which are the blue barrels that are left along the side of concession, as well as some surveying that was started this morning. So they're surveying for property boundaries of the road allowance and some topographical information so that we can get the detailed design and be tender ready for the 2023 budget year.
Thanks. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Dunlop. And Councillor Barclay's question prompted me to ask another one related to that is, so the incident that resulted in a tertiary bypass requirement, that was from a heavy rainfall event, a storm event. I'm wondering, A, is this happening more frequently than it has in the past? And secondly, then, given the kind of extreme weather that we are potentially vulnerable to, I wondered, are we able to manage this if it happens more frequently or even heavier and longer lasting rainfall?
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you for the question. The frequency of tertiary bypasses depends on the fiscal year. We have found that although the first 6 months we had quite a lot of heavy rainfall events, we only had a single bypass. A couple years ago, similar rain events, but we had multiple. The tightening up of the system through inflow and infiltration reduction, the low-flow toilets, the low-flow shower heads, tightening up of the system have reduced the frequency of the filters, of the bypass. But as we go in through the detailed design and as we expand the wastewater treatment plant and expand the footprint with which we will be providing treatment, the equalization tanks, which are basically large steel glass-lined tanks that sit at grade, will handle some of these high volumes. So we're anticipating high volume flows, wet weather events, and have taken that into consideration for any changes in climate as we move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. So encouraging people to have low-flow toilets, low-flow showers, all a good thing. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, anything else? If not, look for a mover for the following: that Council receive the report entitled 2022 Water Wastewater Biennial Report, as well as receive the 2022 Water and Wastewater Biennial Report, Attachment 1, for information and to fulfill commitments in the Drinking Water Quality Management Standard Operational Plan for the Kemptville Drinking Water System. Just a grammatical question. Is this a semi-annual report or a biannual report? Have I misunderstood those terms? Is it every 6 months or every 2 years?
We're tricking you. We used to bring you quarterly DWQMS. We are now bringing you biannual, so every 6 months.
Every 6 months. Okay, thank you. So mover and seconder, please. Councillor Barkley, seconder. I need a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Sullivan. Any further comments, questions, colleagues? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Good, thank you. Okay, Product Care Amending Agreement. Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a presentation for this one. The purpose of tonight's report is to authorize the agreement with Product Care for the continuation of funding for the collection of certain hazardous waste at the transfer station in Oxford Mills. Next slide. An agreement was originally signed by North Grenville in 2015 and was amended in 2021 and provided for individual producer responsibility component in the agreement. Next slide. The agreement remains fundamentally the same with the addition of the collection of propane tanks and a reduction in 50 cents per hour of funding. Next slide. The recommendation is to provide the agreement for creditable hours back to October 2021 and authorize the Director of Public Works or designate to sign the agreement. That completes my report.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions on this one? Not seeing anything. I'll look for a mover and seconder then. Councillor Strachian, Councillor Barkley, thank you. If there's nothing further, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, Director Dunlop, I think one more, budget reallocation for capital projects.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of tonight's report is for Council's approval for the reallocation of the budget allotment of $300,000 for the purchase of a heavy fleet vehicle and utilize some of these funds for the refurbishment of the existing heavy fleet vehicle. Next slide. Due to current market conditions and no inventory available until 2024, alternative resources have to be considered in order to have a reliable fleet for the snow removal season. Next slide. The intent of this recommendation is for the refurbishment of a 2006 International Heavy Truck Combination Unit at an estimated cost of $102,000, which will increase the useful life of the vehicle by an additional 5 years. The remaining balance will be placed in a Public Works Fleet Reserve for the eventual replacement of this heavy fleet vehicle. Next slide. The request tonight is to reallocate a portion of the budget allotment to refurbish a 2006 International Dump Truck Snowplow. That completes my report.
Colleagues, any questions on this? Councillor Barkley?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Dunlop. So refurbishing this one vehicle that we have, are the vehicle, as opposed to purchasing, if it was available, the heavy fleet vehicle. Are they one and the same? Are they both capable of doing the same thing? Or are we sort of making do with what we've got?
The heavy fleet vehicle is the 2006 International plow truck. It is currently requiring, due to corrosion, salt, etc., what we use on the roads, to have a box and a frame rebuilt.
And are we, oh, sorry, I'm getting feedback here. And are we reallocating the entire 300,000 or just 102,000 or whatever?
We anticipate it'll require $102,000 for the refurbishment, and just put the other away is the request, until we're ready to actually secure that vehicle in 5 years down the road.
Oh, okay. I think I understand. We only need 102,000, but we're allocating the 300,000? I'm not clear on that.
The budgetary allotment for the purchase of this vehicle, included in the 2022 budget, is $300,000. The requirement for the refurbishment of the 2006 unit is $102,000. So of the 300, we need 102. We want to put the rest away until we purchase the vehicle.
Okay, any other questions? Ms. Dunlop, with the refurbishment, what do you think is the lifespan of that vehicle?
We estimate that the unit will get an additional 5 years of useful life.
And from your perspective, that $100,000 is then well spent?
Typically, a heavy vehicle of this type has a useful life of 15 years.
Okay. Okay, colleagues, I will then ask for a mover and a seconder for the budget reallocation, and that is that council reallocate the $300,000 budgeted for the purchase of the heavy fleet vehicle for the Public Works Roads Department to instead refurbish the 2006 International Dump Truck Snowplow. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Wilson. Seconder, Councillor Sullivan. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? Good, thank you. Now we'll move on to Parks, Rec, and Culture. Certainly, I know this item is very exciting for me. It was partly through a conversation with the City of Ottawa Councillor, Councillor George Theroux, in particular, who brought the opportunity to collaborate with the City of Ottawa on a possible section of the rail trail, if I'm not mistaken, to our attention, and through some excellent conversation with our staff and City of Ottawa staff. I think we're at a good stage in terms of funding for a feasibility study. So over to you, Mr. Guy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our grant specialist, Christine Chin, is here this evening, and Christine is going to provide the presentation for the report. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Chin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So this report is on the Permanent Public Transit Program with the Active Transportation Fund regarding the feasibility study for a new off-road active trail from North Grenville to Ottawa. So a little bit of background, the Active Transportation Fund is the first federal fund to target active transportation. It is making $400 million in federal funding available over 5 years to support a modal shift away from cars and towards active transportation. The Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, Infrastructure and Communities is responsible for the permanent public transit system and wishes to provide financial support. In July, we received a transfer payment agreement to enter with Infrastructure Canada to receive support and funding. The municipality is eligible to receive $50,000 to fund the procurement and process and costs of hiring a design consultant and conduct the study. The City of Ottawa will be submitting a complimentary ATF technical assessment study for their portion of the trail. And in order to receive this allocation under the fund, Council is required to pass a resolution of Council to enter into the funding agreement with the funding agreement with the province. So recommendation is that Council approve and pass this resolution and then authorize the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture or his designate as the signing authority.
Okay. Thank you. And to be clear, the feasibility study is looking at the possible construction of a 12-kilometer cycling trail linking North Grenville with Osgood. And as we know in Osgood, Councillor O'Sullivan and I have had many a discussion around this. There is a rail trail, a multi-use pathway using the old rail bed that goes all the way into Ottawa. So certainly part of the dream here is to see if we could connect all the way into the city of Ottawa and provide a much longer continuous cycling experience and multi-use pathway for residents of North Grenville and of course residents of the city of Ottawa and beyond. And Ms. Chin, if I'm not mistaken, the city of Ottawa will be doing exactly the same thing for its portion. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Councillor Strachan?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Ms. Chin. A question for either yourself or Director Guy. So this funding is for the feasibility to assess whether or not it's realistic to do that work. What happens should the feasibility study say, yes, it looks good, let's move forward? Is there funding within the same envelope that we can apply for the construction, for the work that would be required, or where do we go from there?
Through your worship to Councillor Strack again. This funding is specifically for a feasibility study to look at the various options to connect the two municipalities, basically how to get over the 416 or provide options to work around that. At this time, there is no funding specifically for the construction of that. I know that the City of Ottawa is looking at this as a long-term project. This is the initial stage to look at the feasibility of actually doing it. And once the feasibility study is completed and we can see what the costs are associated with actually doing the work, and then it would become, the various councils to decide if they want to put forth money in the budget or to look at various grant opportunities in the future that might come up to help us actually move the project forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
And to be clear, 2 years ago, this fund didn't exist. So this was a recent creation of the federal government to enable smaller communities to, in fact, pursue recreational initiatives that might otherwise be out of reach. So hear what you're saying, Mr. Guy, in terms of this clearly just being the feasibility piece. And it's a big project for, I think, both the municipality and the City of Ottawa, should the feasibility study point us in the right direction. But I would expect at both the provincial and federal level, some of that recreational funding will likely continue in one way or another. But I think we've got a ways to go before we get there.
Yes, sorry, I was just looking for confirmation as to whether or not this funding provides for more than the feasibility study, or if we'd have to look elsewhere. So that makes sense to me, that looking elsewhere and having to seek out other grants or other funding opportunities in the long term would be the next step. So thank you.
Councillor Barclay?
Yeah, I note that the monies available for the study include an investigation of the procurement process. I'm not too sure what a procurement process might look like. Are we talking about expropriation or what will that determine?
Through you, your worship to Councillor Barclay, that is just through the to procure a design consultant to look at the feasibility study. That's what we're speaking to there.
My understanding is most of the rail trail lands are now held by either a municipality, so it's not a question of acquiring the land, but getting over the 416 in particular, which presents obviously a major barrier. Or perhaps there are workarounds, but that's why I think that feasibility study is absolutely required. Okay, so looking for a mover and a seconder to authorize the municipality to enter into agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and right of the Province of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure, for the Province of Ontario to receive funding on the Permanent Public Transit Program Active Transportation Fund for 2022 and all future years, and authorize the Director of Parks, Rec and Culture or their designate to execute the agreement. Mover and seconder, Councillor O'Sullivan? Councillor Wilson? And just a further clarification, this is federal or provincial funding? Mr. Guy?
It's federal funding.
Okay, so the motion refers to the province of Ontario. Do we mean Government of Canada?
Yes.
Okay, So as amended then? Okay, that was my understanding too. A legacy project of a former federal minister, Catherine McKenna, who was determined to create opportunities for smaller municipalities to pursue recreational initiatives, which is why I had understood it to be federal, knowing the rationale behind that particular funding. Okay, I'll call the vote then. All in favor? Good, thank you. So with that, we are on to emergency protective services, for which there is nothing. Correspondence has been properly dealt with. Under our consent agenda, nothing under other business this evening. Any notice of motions, colleagues? Okay. I just want to ask Mr. Dyke, we had entertained the possibility of modifying the council agenda owing to the upcoming international plowing match and potentially other activities in October. When would we seek to do that?
This evening, if you like, Your Worship.
Okay, I think our intention was to not host or convene the council meeting that is scheduled, if I'm not mistaken, for September 20th, Tuesday, September 20th. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder to modify the council agenda so that we don't hold that meeting in particular. So Councillors O'Sullivan and Strachan. And before I'll call the vote on that, colleagues, you may not wish to do this evening, but the other meeting identified as a possible one to cancel would be Tuesday, October 18th. That we can do that at a future meeting. We don't have to make that decision now, but certainly that's another one to keep an eye on. I believe we are meeting basically weekly until October 24th and beyond.
If I might, Your Worship, if council could consider the October meeting now, it would be helpful to staff as we're trying to lay out the agendas as we go forward, particularly as it relates to some planning matters that are going to come up. So if we know if the meeting is going to happen or not, that would help us greatly in our agenda planning. However, the planning meeting stuff translate into council, could translate into the council meeting. So from a timing standpoint, it just helps us plan the agendas. If we know.
So maybe I'll just remind council that at this stage, we have an all-chairs meeting on Wednesday, September 28th. We have a meeting scheduled on October 4th. That is a council meeting. We have a council planning meeting on October 12th, which is a Wednesday. We have one scheduled for Tuesday, October 18th, which is a regular council meeting. So that's the schedule right now. There's quite a few in there. We may wish to consider leaving the October 18th meeting off the schedule unless someone feels an imperative to proceed with it. Councillor Strachan?
Just to confirm, Madam Mayor, if we were to eliminate the one on the 18th of October, that would leave us with only one regular council meeting between now and then, because the one on the 12th is a planning meeting, is that correct?
We have a council meeting on Tuesday, October 4th. We
Yes.
have a council meeting for largely planning matters, but often it accommodates other matters. It's not exclusive to planning, so that meeting can also accommodate any matter that arises. For the purposes of public engagement sessions, Planning Act prescribed meetings, they must be held on October 12th or on the designated day, but we can also accommodate other council matters on October 12th, and then we have a meeting scheduled for October 18th. So is there an appetite to continue with the meeting on October 18th at this stage, or to remove it from the council agenda?
Not knowing what's on our schedule or agenda to pass before the end of term, I would like to keep the 18th.
Okay, so just so we're clear, our end of term for this council, in fact, is, in my understanding, late November. This council continues to meet. Mr. Dyke?
That's correct. The term of the council does go to the end of November. However, with the election being on the 24th, notwithstanding the results, the council could find themselves in a lame duck position, which would eliminate council's ability to do work. So if you don't have the meeting on the 18th, it may preclude work being done beyond the 24th.
Okay. So with that in mind, I see among council colleagues an appetite to remove one meeting. Mr. Dyke, we may come back to you with the removal of a second. I think, as many are aware, council colleagues around this table and candidates for council and mayor are getting all kinds of invitations for debates by community associations and many other organizations. So I think we can revisit that, colleagues, if we need to. I don't think we have to commit to it permanently, but we can envision that it may happen, and we'll see how it goes. The motion then is to remove, at this stage, the meeting on Tuesday, September 20th, which is the first day of the International Plowing Match. I have a mover and a seconder. Do I not? Councillor Strachan, do you have a concern? Okay. So do I have a mover and a seconder? Yes. O'Sullivan and Strachan, is that right? Okay. So then I will call the question unless... Okay, fine, go ahead. So Councillor Strachan, go ahead.
In order for us to make, through you, Madam Mayor, in order for us to make a decision regarding the October 18th to keep it or not, notwithstanding other debates and whatnot that may be coming up, it would be helpful to understand what's on the schedule between now and then. If there are items that should be discussed prior to that, then we could probably make a better informed decision. So if, I suppose if the clerk is able to provide us that, then we can make a decision, whether that's tonight or later on. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. I just a question. What is the time frame that we need to give public notice if we're going to cancel that? Like, it's 2 weeks from today, that meeting that we're canceling. Is that adequate? And so what notice do we need for the 18th? Because we're meeting on the 4th, right?
We're meeting on the 4th, and we are meeting the following week. So there are 2 meetings already envisioned for October and a possible third.
Okay.
It's, as I understand it, Mr. Dyke, you can fill it in. Our planning meetings are fairly non-negotiable if we've given public notice for public hearings. So those meetings are, in my opinion, very difficult to change because we've provided the public with an opportunity to come forward and weigh in on a possible rezoning or a committee of adjustment matter. It's really the non-planning specific meetings that are, I think, more flexible. Mr. Dyke, have I stated that correctly?
That's correct, Your Worship. I mean, the regular council meetings are a lot more flexibility. The planning ones, they're set.
Yep.
They could be set based on the applications received.
Indeed. So, Councillor Barclay.
Yeah, just one item that occurred to me, that we did defer discussion of the housing strategy at a previous meeting, and I believe that's scheduled for the 14th of this month. Yeah, but I'd be curious to know from the clerk what other sort of items that need our attention. That would help us to decide whether we cancel the 18th of October or not. Sorry.
I'm not sure. Do you have anything on that agenda so far?
If I
No,
might be,
yeah.
before we go with that part, Your Worship, I think what we're trying to do is, it's not exactly a number of specific things right now. There's the financial report from Mr. Ogarunde was going to come on the 20th. We can move that to the 4th of October. That's not a problem. It's just when we're planning, when we're getting information back from the directors and departments, is stuff that needs to come forward on certain timelines. That's when we're talking about the planning side of it. I don't see a big issue with this when we end up with a very long meeting on the 4th of October. But we should be able to accommodate. The bigger concern is impact from the planning meetings, is making sure that we can accommodate those as we move closer into the end of this term. So.
And just to be clear, the meetings in question, both the one the week of the IPM and the one on October 18th are not planning meetings. So we're not looking at changing any planning meetings. These are other council meetings where we may likely be able to accommodate other business. Again, I think there's enough lead time for us to be able to remove that meeting from the agenda if required, if there's no appetite for council to take it off the agenda this evening. But I do appreciate Mr. Dyke's comments that if we aren't having that meeting on October 18th, then we need to give staff and ourselves a couple of weeks' notice to do that. So at this point, I see a motion to remove, once again, the meeting on September 20th, which is the first day of the International Plowing Match. Why don't, colleagues, we take a couple of weeks to look at that meeting on October 20th. We can revisit it next week if we have to, or the following week. And that is the one that is scheduled for Tuesday, October 18th. Okay, so With the motion on the table, I will call the question for the elimination of the September 20th meeting. Okay. That passes. Thank you. So with that in mind, I'll just go back to regular council business this evening. Any notice of motions this evening? Okay. I did want to provide an update in regards to some counties matters. Ms. Dunlop had a good meeting last week in regards to some outstanding motions that were forwarded to County Council in regards to some specific speed assessments and proposed speed reductions. I plan on also raising those tomorrow at my United Counties Council meeting. The issue of the County Road 43 and 22 roundabout, so South Court Drive and County Road 43, remains an urgent priority for the municipality of North Grenville. Unfortunately, I'm being told by county staff that due to some property acquisition hangups, the pre-approved tender that County's Council, on which I sit, approved in January has not proceeded. So the tender for the construction of that roundabout, it remains pending. I know that I hear every couple of weeks from residents in the community about near misses or, in fact, accidents at that intersection. There is a high incident of accidents, 2 of which have happened in the last 4 to 5 weeks. So I do plan to raise this again at County Council tomorrow. We had every expectation that the tender would have been issued no later than the summer, and unfortunately that project continues to languish, and it's not entirely obvious to me why precisely we haven't been able to move forward other than some issues around property acquisition, but I'm hopeful that we'll get the tender issued before the end of the year. So while not a notice of motion, I just did want to reassure my council colleagues that we have been working hard with the United Counties Public Works Department to move forward some previous motions that have been passed by this council and to stay on top of some major capital projects. And I know later this month we will hear from from McIntosh Perry, who are overseeing County Road 43, and will provide a project update. I'll move on to introduction and consideration of bylaws. Ms. Workman, did we catch all of those this evening? Yes, we did. Okay, any questions? I think we just have Jen Westendorp here this evening. Anything from you? You're good? Okay, awesome. So then we'll go to close of the meeting. The confirmation bylaw is remaining. That is at bylaw 7122 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on September 6th be adopted and passed. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Barkley, Councillor Strachan, thank you. I will call the question. All in favor? And a resolution to adjourn at 7:30 p.m. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Strachan, Councillor O'Sullivan. That was under an hour, colleagues, so I don't know how we did that, but I'll call the question. All in favor?